Hello loves, and welcome to today's video. It is June, which means it is Pride Month. Happy Pride to everyone who celebrates. To celebrate Pride Month, I'm going to read some books that I recently won from a local bookstore. All three of the books were nominated for a Writers' Trust of Canada LGBTQ+ Emerging Writers Award. The first is Body So Fluorescent by Amanda Cordner and David DiGiovanni. This is a play about someone who goes out partying and the next morning they wake up with a text from their best friend saying it's over, and they have to try and piece together the night to figure out what happened. The second book is Chrysalis by Anuja Varghese. This is a series of short stories about women reclaiming their power, and specifically racialized women. And this was the winner of that award. And the third one is Scenes from the Underground by Gabriel Colette. This is a series of vignettes about the Montreal underground scene. There are also illustrations throughout, so this seems more like kind of poetry. So these are the three books I'm going to be reading for this video. I'll provide you some updates once I have gotten started on the first. So I finished the first one of the books and I did go with the shortest option. This is only like 40 pages. So I did read Body So Fluorescent. This is the script to a play. It is about our main character, Mess, who, like I mentioned earlier, wakes up from a night of partying with a text from their friend saying it's over. The first act of the play is that person's recollection of what happened that night, and then there's the act two, and you get the perspective of their friend, what happened that night. I really enjoyed this. It was very brief. Obviously, it's only 40 pages, but I thought it made some really good points about the LGBT community and the level of cultural appropriation that happens within that community. I thought it was a very clear and accessible way to point out those problems within the community without seeming like an attack on the community itself. For being 40 pages, I did really enjoy this and I would probably recommend it. Body So Fluorescent, a success. I'm now halfway through Scenes from the Underground and I'm not quite sure how I feel about this one. Scenes from the Underground is the author's stories of his partying in different cities, Montreal, Berlin, Paris, New York, and the back describes them as Instagram style vignettes. Maybe I'm using Instagram wrong. Maybe I'm following the wrong people. Some of these stories are like 5 pages long. Is that happening on Instagram? Are people sharing like short stories on Instagram? Is that a thing? I never see a caption longer than like 3 sentences. As to the content, I'm not sure how I feel about it. Keeping in mind that while I'm not like straight edge, I am not an avid partier. So some of this content is a little more extreme than what I have ever personally experienced. It's kind of giving me the vibes of like being in class on a Monday morning and hearing the popular kids talk about whatever went down at the party on the weekend that I was never cool enough to get invited to, except so much more extreme with the drug use and the explicit content. I don't know how I feel about this. I'm still gonna finish it. I'm halfway through. There is one part of the book that I liked, and it was a very specific picture which I think I can actually show. It is this man dressed as a Furby. I liked that. I'm gonna finish this and then I will give you my final thoughts. So I just finished Scenes from the Underground, and was it well written? Yes. Did I enjoy it? Not particularly. It is just a series of stories about the author doing a lot of drugs and having a lot of explicit scenarios that they get themselves into. I wouldn't like this type of story regardless of whether it was queer or not. It's not particularly an experience that I relate to very well. Never been a big partier myself. There wasn't really any binding moral of it or growth that I saw within the story. It was just a series of vignettes of this person partying. Not particularly of interest to me. So if that is something that would interest you, like I said, it's well written. The artwork was cool, if explicit, but this was definitely just not the book for me. Oh, I am almost finished Chrysalis, but I wanted to give an update that's kind of a mini rant that's sparked by this book, but not something exclusive to this book. I've noticed that there is sometimes a tendency with Canadian authors to assume everyone knows the layout of the GTA, because there's a few different stories in this collection where the character makes a big deal about being from Scarborough or not being from Scarborough, but being on the Toronto side of Scarborough. And it just really irritates me as someone who doesn't live in Toronto, has never lived in Toronto, but is passingly familiar with the GTA, having been there often because it was the nearest big city to be able to do concerts or fun things during the summer. It just bothers me that Canadian authors, or some Canadian authors, really just only know the GTA and assumes that everybody else also knows about the GTA. If you are someone who lives in Vancouver, are you really going to know or care about the difference between living in Toronto and living in Scarborough and what that means from a socioeconomic level? Because that is the implication in some of these stories, is they are earning more money and therefore they can leave Scarborough. There are other places in Canada. There are other audiences for this content other than people who live in Toronto. So why would you not make an effort to write in a way that isn't alienating to those audiences, you know? That's my mini rant. Again, happens in this book a few times, but it's also not the only book I've read that has done that. I'm going to finish the last 2 stories I have in this collection and then give you my thoughts on it. Okay, I have a second petty pet peeve with this book because I'm in the very last story. I have 4 pages left. Should I just be finishing this and doing a wrap up? Yes. But instead, I'm going to complain about the fact that the character is taking the train from Montreal to Toronto and paid for their coffee from the little cart in cash. And as someone who takes the Via at least 3 times a year, Via doesn't accept cash. Credit card only. Literally, last time I was on a train, which was, 3 months ago, the person next to me tried to pay for a coffee with cash and the person was like, no, sorry. And so the person couldn't get their coffee. Who is this person who is just writing so much about Toronto, but then also not writing accurately about the Via? All right, I have now finished Chrysalis, so this was a series of short stories. I do find it interesting that this was the winner of the LGBTQ2S+ award, because while there were stories with LGBT characters, it wasn't exclusively about LGBT people. The main focus of this and the commonality among all of the stories were characters of Indian descent, and I thought that's kind of an interesting choice, especially since this was the winner. This collection of stories really focuses on the Indian experience and how that interacts, especially in Canada, though there was at least one story that was specifically set in India. A lot of the stories were about the competing contrasts between trying to maintain a connection to your cultural heritage while also adjusting to the culture of Canada or modern values in terms of being accepting of LGBT people, for example, or being more sexually liberated. So this being an anthology, there were some stories I enjoyed, some that were more misses for me, but we are going to go through each of the books and my rating for them now. And coincidentally, I have a spreadsheet where I track my ratings and I use a Copile rating system, and I have 3 tabs to keep track of ratings. One for anthologies, one for fiction, and one for nonfiction. So each of these is on a different tab of my rating system. We are going to go through them. I'll go through my reasoning behind my rating and the rating for each, and we'll go in least favorite to favorite. My least favorite was Scenes from the Underground by Gabriel Gillette. This, using my nonfiction rating system, gets a 3.14. So this is a memoir. These are real stories about this person. This one for me got low ratings in this rating system for personal impact, because I don't particularly care to hear about other people's party experiences unless it's like a friend. Logic informativeness, I guess it informed me about the parties I'm not invited to. But it didn't particularly have anything that was self-reflective or any kind of life lessons to be learned from some of the experiences in here. It just kind of came off, again, lower rating in authenticity, as kind of inauthentic, because it's just this guy bragging about all the parties he goes to and all the drugs he does and all the illicit sexual experiences he has in bathroom stalls. I don't know why that is a award nominated queer experience, I guess. It was well written. Some of the artwork was cool. I didn't connect with this very well. That one is the lowest rated of the three at a 3.25, but 3.14 was what the actual rating was. I gave Chrysalis a 3.2, so round up to 3.25. This is a short story collection, or what I would consider an anthology for my spreadsheet tab, and that means that I, on a post-it note, wrote down what I would rate each of the stories, basically mostly on enjoyability, and then I took the average of that, and that's what this gets. So this gets a 3.2 based on that. There was one story in here that I gave 5 stars to. It was kind of a Cinderella retelling about this woman who works in a mall's food court, and then the shoe store is going out of business, and I did enjoy that one a lot. But given that I was going into this with the thought that this was going to be a Ogilvie Prize LGBTQ2S+ winner, it was kind of a letdown that not all of the stories were LGBT. Definitely appreciate some of the intersectionality in this with what it means to be specifically someone of Indian descent who is queer and the cultural expectations that come with that. But then there were also stories in here that were just like, a man and a wife have a really bad relationship and lightning keeps striking their goddess statues in the backyard. And I'm like, okay, all right, that's fine. Also, my little mini rants about the fact that not everybody is from Toronto and knows the socio-economic implications of the certain sub-neighborhoods or streets you live on. This one got a 3.25, which makes the winner for me, even if it didn't win the actual award, Body So Fluorescent by Amanda Cordona and David DiGiovanni. This was very brief. This is like 40 pages long, but I thought what it could do in those 40 pages in terms of both respecting the queer community, but also kind of calling them out a little bit for the fact that a lot of terminology and slang from the queer community is appropriated from Black culture. Even though this is 40 pages long, I honestly would recommend it. I think I am currently the only person to have rated this book on Storygraph, so I don't know how widely spread it is to access and read this, but I would definitely recommend it. I gave it a 4.25. I enjoyed it. It's great. It made its point and it ended. Is one thing that I did flag on this, and that was how 2016 this specific line of the play was. God, she was so pretty last night. She had this, it was these skin-tight Aztec design leggings with these platform boots and a black crop top. The Aztec design leggings. That was a time in fashion that I luckily didn't participate in. So that is my little dive into some award-nominated Canadian queer literature. If you made it to the end of this video, leave a comment down below letting me know what other LGBT books I should be checking out, or you can leave the shoe emoji for a Cinderella retelling in Chrysalis. If you'd like to see more of my content, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like on this video. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day!